8-year-old Emma Larsen was building a snow fort in her backyard when the worst blizzard in North Dakota history struck without warning, turning a sunny afternoon into a whiteout nightmare with zero visibility and temperatures plummeting to -40 degrees. Emma became disoriented in her own yard, unable to find her way back to the house just 50 feet away. But Nanook, her family's Siberian Husky, found her huddled against a fence post and made a life-saving decision. For 14 hours, through the most brutal storm conditions imaginable, Nanook used his body as a living blanket, sharing his body heat and creating a survival shelter that kept Emma alive until rescuers could reach them through 8 feet of snow. Welcome to Saved by Tales. Before we dive into this incredible story of survival against impossible odds and a dog's instinct to become a living heating system, tell me in the comments, have you ever witnessed an animal's remarkable ability to provide warmth and protection during extreme weather? And if you believe these amazing stories of animal endurance and life-saving devotion deserve to be shared, hit that subscribe button and join our community celebrating the four-legged heroes who literally give their bodies to save the ones they love. The weather forecast for Williston, North Dakota, on February 14th had called for light snow and temperatures in the teens, typical winter weather for the region. Emma Larsen had been granted permission to play outside after lunch, building snow forts in the backyard while her mother, Sarah, worked from home in her office overlooking the yard. Emma loved winter and was an experienced snow player despite her young age. She knew the boundaries of their property, understood the safety rules about staying where her mother could see her, and was bundled in appropriate winter gear for the predicted conditions. Nanook, the family's 4-year-old Siberian Husky, was Emma's constant companion during outdoor adventures. The dog had been bred for extreme cold weather conditions and thrived in North Dakota winters, often preferring to sleep outside even when temperatures dropped well below zero. Nanook loves this weather more than Emma does, Sarah often told friends. That dog was born for blizzards. At 2:30 p.m., the National Weather Service issued an emergency alert that would change everything. A massive Arctic front was moving faster than predicted, bringing blizzard conditions that would create life-threatening situations within hours. Sarah immediately called Emma inside, but as she looked out her office window, she realized the storm had already begun. What had been a clear view of her daughter playing just minutes earlier was now completely obscured by swirling snow and winds that were rapidly intensifying. Emma had been focused on perfecting the entrance to her snow fort when the winds suddenly picked up and snow began falling so heavily that she could barely see her own hands. Within minutes, the familiar landmarks of her backyard, the swing set, the garden shed, even the house, disappeared into a wall of white. "Mama," Emma called, but her voice was swallowed by the howling wind that had risen to dangerous levels in just moments. She tried to walk toward where she thought the house should be, but the blizzard conditions made it impossible to maintain direction. Every step took her into deeper snow, and the wind drove ice crystals into her face with painful force. Panic set in as Emma realized she was lost in her own backyard. The storm had created a complete whiteout where she couldn't see beyond her outstretched arms. The house that should have been just 50 feet away had vanished into the storm. Emma tried calling for her mother again, but the wind was now so fierce that she could barely hear her own voice. She stumbled through the deepening snow, becoming more disoriented with each step, until she finally gave up trying to walk and huddled against what felt like a fence post. That's when Nanook found her. Sarah's panic was immediate when she looked out her window and couldn't see Emma anywhere in the yard. The storm had intensified so rapidly that visibility had dropped to zero in less than 10 minutes. "Emma!" Sarah screamed as she rushed outside into conditions that were already dangerous for adults. The wind was so strong it nearly knocked her over, and the snow was falling so heavily that she couldn't see her own porch light from 10 feet away. Sarah managed to reach the area where Emma had been playing, but found only partially built snow structures that were already being buried by the rapidly accumulating snow. There was no sign of her daughter or Nanook. Fighting her way back to the house against wind gusts that were approaching 60 miles per hour, Sarah called 911 with shaking hands. "My 8-year-old daughter is lost in the blizzard," Sarah sobbed into the phone. "She was playing in the backyard and now I can't find her." The storm came out of nowhere. While Sarah was calling for help, Nanook had already located Emma through scent and sound that carried through the storm despite the impossible conditions. The Siberian Husky's breeding and instincts made him perfectly equipped for exactly this type of emergency. Emma was crying and shivering when Nanook found her, curled against the fence post with snow already beginning to bury her small form. The dog immediately assessed the situation with the survival intelligence bred into Arctic dogs over thousands of years. Instead of trying to lead Emma back through the storm, which would have been impossible in the whiteout conditions, Nanook made a different choice. He positioned himself around Emma's body, using his thick double coat and natural body heat to create a protective shelter. The husky curled around Emma like a living blanket, his body blocking the worst of the wind and snow, while his fur provided insulation that her winter clothing alone couldn't match. Emma instinctively burrowed into Nanook's warmth, understanding that the dog was trying to keep her safe. "Good, Nanook," Emma whispered through chattering teeth. "Stay warm with me." The blizzard that had struck North Dakota was being called a once-in-a-generation storm by meteorologists. Wind speeds reached 80 miles per hour, visibility dropped to zero, and temperatures plummeted from 15 degrees to -40 in just 3 hours. Emergency services were overwhelmed with calls, but most rescue operations had to be suspended due to conditions that were too dangerous for even experienced first responders. The storm was dumping snow at a rate of 4 inches per hour, with wind creating drifts that were already 8 feet deep in some areas. "This is the worst blizzard conditions I've seen in 30 years of emergency response," said Fire Chief Robert Anderson as he coordinated rescue efforts from the station. "We have multiple people missing across the county, but we can't safely put rescue teams out in these conditions." Sarah's call about Emma was one of 12 missing person reports that came in during the first hour of the storm, but the child's age and the extreme conditions made her case a priority, despite the operational challenges. As the storm intensified throughout the afternoon and evening, Nanook maintained his protective position around Emma with remarkable endurance. The dog understood instinctively that moving or leaving would mean death for both of them in these conditions. Nanook's thick double coat was specifically evolved for Arctic survival. His outer guard hairs repelled snow and wind, while his dense undercoat trapped warm air close to his body. By wrapping himself around Emma, he created a microclimate that stayed significantly warmer than the outside air temperature. The dog also used his body to create a windbreak, positioning himself to absorb the worst impacts of the gusting wind that could have caused fatal wind chill for Emma's exposed face and hands. Throughout the night, as temperatures dropped to -40 degrees with wind chills approaching -70, Nanook never moved from his protective position. The dog's breathing helped warm the air around Emma's face, and his body heat prevented hypothermia from setting in despite conditions that should have been rapidly fatal. Inside the house, Sarah maintained contact with emergency services while watching helplessly as the storm continued to rage. The blizzard was forecast to continue through the night and into the following day, making any rescue attempts impossible until conditions improved. "Is there any chance she could survive out there?" Sarah asked the emergency coordinator through tears. "In normal winter conditions maybe," came the honest answer. "But these conditions are extreme even for North Dakota. We're dealing with temperatures and wind chills that can cause frostbite in minutes." What the rescue coordinators didn't know was that Emma wasn't facing the storm alone. Nanook's presence was providing the crucial margin of survival that made the difference between life and death in conditions that would have killed an unprotected person in less than an hour. The husky's natural survival instincts guided his behavior throughout the night. He adjusted his position to provide maximum protection as wind directions changed, and he used his body heat strategically to keep Emma's core temperature stable. At first light, the storm finally began to weaken enough for rescue operations to begin. Volunteer search teams from across the region converged on Williston, using snowmobiles and specialized cold weather rescue equipment to reach areas that were inaccessible by normal vehicles. The snow accumulation was unprecedented, 8 feet in some areas, with drifts reaching 12 feet where wind had concentrated the fall. Many familiar landmarks were completely buried, making navigation extremely difficult even for experienced rescuers. "We're looking for an 8-year-old girl and a husky dog," search and rescue coordinator Janet Walsh briefed the teams. "They've been missing for over 14 hours in conditions that have been consistently life-threatening." The search began in the immediate area around the Larsen home, with teams working in a grid pattern to systematically check every possible location where Emma might have sought shelter. Rescue Team 3 was working the northeast section of the Larsen property when they spotted a dark shape against the white expanse of snow. As they approached on snowmobiles, they could make out what appeared to be a large dog lying motionless in the snow. "I've got something," radioed team leader Mark Rodriguez. "Looks like a dog, but I can't tell if it's alive." As the team got closer, they realized that Nanook was not only alive but was actively sheltering something beneath his body. When they carefully moved the snow away from around the dog, they discovered Emma, unconscious but breathing, wrapped in Nanook's protective embrace. "We've got her," Rodriguez radioed excitedly. "Both the girl and the dog are alive." Nanook was too exhausted to move immediately when rescuers arrived. The dog had maintained his protective position for over 14 hours in conditions that had tested even his Arctic-bred endurance to the limits. Emma was rushed to Trinity Health Medical Center in Minot, where emergency room staff were amazed by her condition considering the extreme weather exposure she had endured. "This child should have died from hypothermia hours ago," said Dr. Lisa Chen, who treated Emma. "Her core body temperature is low, but not dangerously so." Something provided significant protection from the cold. That something was Nanook, who was treated by veterinary staff for exhaustion and mild frostbite on his paws and nose, injuries that occurred from maintaining his protective position throughout the storm. "The dog essentially became a living heating system," explained Dr. Amanda Foster, a veterinarian who specialized in cold weather animal physiology. His body heat and insulation properties created a survival shelter that kept the child alive in conditions that would have been fatal within hours. The reunion between Emma and her mother was emotional and profound, but Emma's first concern was for Nanook, who was being treated in the veterinary section of the medical facility. "Is Nanook okay?" Emma asked repeatedly. "He kept me warm all night. He saved me." When Emma was finally allowed to see Nanook, the exhausted dog managed to wag his tail and nuzzle her gently. The bond between them had been strengthened by their shared survival experience. "Nanook was my blanket," Emma explained to doctors and nurses. "He curled around me and kept the wind away. I wasn't scared because Nanook was taking care of me." The story of Emma's survival and Nanook's protective devotion captured national media attention, highlighting both the dangers of sudden severe weather and the remarkable capabilities of dogs bred for extreme conditions. "This case demonstrates the incredible bond between children and their animal companions," said Dr. Robert Kim during a television interview about the rescue. Nanook's behavior was instinctual, but his endurance and dedication went beyond normal survival responses. The story was featured in weather safety campaigns and emergency preparedness programs, using Emma and Nanook's experience to educate families about blizzard dangers and survival techniques. Both Emma and Nanook recovered completely from their 14-hour ordeal in the blizzard. Emma experienced no lasting effects from her cold exposure, and Nanook's frostbite healed within weeks. The North Dakota state legislature passed a resolution honoring Nanook's heroism, and the American Kennel Club presented him with a special award for canine courage. But the most meaningful recognition came from the survival community, where Nanook's actions became a textbook example of animal survival instincts. Nanook demonstrated every survival technique that Arctic peoples have relied on for thousands of years, explained survival expert Dr. Jennifer Walsh. Body heat sharing, wind protection, microclimate creation, he instinctively knew how to keep Emma alive. 5 years after the blizzard, Emma and Nanook remained inseparable. Emma had developed a deep respect for winter weather and animal intelligence, often speaking about her experience to school groups and weather safety programs. "Nanook taught me that animals are smart in ways people don't always understand," Emma said during a presentation to her 5th grade class. "He knew how to keep me alive when I didn't know how to keep myself alive." The family had enhanced their winter safety preparations and emergency protocols, but their greatest source of security remained their connection with Nanook, whose protective instincts had proven capable of overcoming the worst conditions nature could create. Their story continued to inspire families in cold weather regions and demonstrate the remarkable capabilities of dogs whose breeding and instincts make them natural survival partners for humans in extreme conditions. I still think about that February afternoon when an 8-year-old girl became lost in her own backyard as a blizzard transformed familiar surroundings into a deadly white maze. If Nanook had tried to lead Emma home through the storm, if he'd sought shelter for himself alone, Emma would have become another tragic victim of weather conditions that kill with ruthless efficiency. Nanook's story teaches us something profound about the partnership between humans and animals that has evolved over thousands of years. This wasn't just a pet protecting his family, this was a demonstration of survival knowledge bred into Arctic dogs through countless generations of keeping humans alive in conditions where nature offers no mercy. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed an animal's remarkable ability to provide warmth and protection during extreme weather? Have your pets shown instincts that helped your family survive dangerous conditions? These survival partnerships might be more important than we realize in our modern world. Share your experiences in the comments below, because at Saved by Tales, we believe that our animal companions carry within them survival wisdom that can mean the difference between life and death when nature shows its harshest face. If Nanook's incredible story moved you, if it reminded you of the life-saving partnerships that exist between humans and animals, please share this video with others who might need that reminder. Hit that like button, subscribe to Saved by Tales, and help us continue telling the stories of animals whose bodies become shields, whose warmth becomes life support, and whose devotion conquers even the most brutal forces of nature. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes our greatest protection from the storm comes wrapped in fur and powered by a heart that refuses to let us face the cold alone.